6. Nerves, the great oracle and eminent junkie assured him. Just nerves. All part of the cool turkey experience, little brother. But if nerves was what it was, how come he felt this odd sleepiness stealing over him? Odd because he should have been itchy, ditzy, feeling that urge to squirm and scratch that came before the actual shakes. Even if he had not been in Henry's cool turkey state, there was the fact that he was about to attempt bringing 2 pounds of coke through U.S. Customs, a felony punishable by not less than 10 years in federal prison, and he seemed to be suddenly having blackouts as well. Still, that feeling of sleepiness. He sipped at his drink again, then let his eyes slip shut. Why did you black out? I didn't, or she'd be running for all the emergency gear they carry. Blanked out, then. It's no good either way. You never blanked out like that before in your life. Nodded out, yeah, but never blanked out. Something odd about his right hand, too. It seemed to throb vaguely, as if he pounded it with a hammer. He flexed it without opening his eyes. No ache, no throb, no blue bombardier's eyes. As for the blankouts, they were a combination of going cool turkey and a good case of what the great oracle and eminent etc. would no doubt call the smuggler's blues. But I'm going to sleep just the same, he thought. How about that? Henry's face drifted by him like an untethered balloon. Don't worry, Henry was saying. You'll be alright, little brother. You'll fly down there to Nassau, check in at the Aquinas. There'll be a man come by Friday night, one of the good guys. He'll fix you, leave you enough stuff to take you through the weekend. Sunday night, he brings the coke, and you give him the key to the safe box deposit. Monday morning, you do the routine just like Balazar said. This guy will pay. He knows how it's supposed to go. Monday noon, you'll fly out, and with a face as honest as yours, you'll breeze through customs, and we'll be eating steak in Sparks before the sun goes down. It's gonna be a breeze, little brother. Nothing but a cool breeze. But it had been a sort of warm breeze after all. The trouble with him and Henry was that they were like Charlie Brown and Lucy. The only difference was that in a while, Henry would hold on to the football so Eddie could kick it. Not often, but once in a while. Eddie had even thought, while in one of his heroin dazes, that he ought to write Charles Schultz a letter. Dear Mr. Schultz, he would say, you're missing a bet by always having Lucy pull up the football at the last second. She ought to hold it down there once in a while. Nothing Charlie Brown could ever predict, you understand. Sometimes she'd maybe hold it down for him to kick 3, even 4 times in a row. Then nothing for a month. Then once. And then nothing for 3 or 4 days. And then, you get the idea. That would really fuck the kid up, wouldn't it? Eddie knew it would really fuck the kid up. From experience, he knew it. One of the good guys, Henry had said. But the guy who showed up had been a sallow skin thing with a British accent, a hairline mustache that looked like something out of the 1940s film noir, and yellow teeth that all leaned inward like the teeth of a very old animal trap. You have the key, senor? He asked, except in that British public school accent it came out sounding like what you called your last year after high school. The key's safe, Eddie said, if that's what you mean. Then give it to me. That's not the way it goes. You're supposed to have something to take me through the weekend. Sunday night you're supposed to bring me something. I give you the key. Monday, you go into town and use it to get something else. I don't know what, 'cause that's not my business. Suddenly, there was a small, fat, blue aromatic in the sallow-skinned thing's hand. Why don't you just give it to me, senor? You'll save time and effort. You will save your life. There was deep steel in Eddie Dean. Junkie or no junkie. Henry knew it. More important, Balazar knew it. That was why he had been sent. Most of them thought he had gone because he was hooked up through the bag and back again. He knew it. Henry knew it, Balazar too. But only he and Henry knew he would have gone even if he was straight as a stick. For Henry. Balazar hadn't got quite that far in his figuring, but fuck Balazar. "Why don't you just put that thing away, you little scuzz?" Eddie asked. "Or do you maybe want Balazar to send someone down here and cut your eyes out of your head with a rusty knife?" The sallow thing smiled. The gun was gone like magic. In its place was a small envelope. He handed it to Eddie. "Just a little joke, you know." "If you say so. I'll see you Sunday night then." He turned toward the door. "I think you better wait." The sallow thing turned back, eyebrows raised. "You think I won't go if I want to go? I think if you go and this is bad shit, it'll be gone tomorrow, and then you'll be in deep shit." The sallow thing turned sulkily. It sat in the room's single easy chair while Eddie opened the envelope and spilled out a small quantity of the brown stuff. It looked evil. He looked at the sallow thing. "I know how it looks. It looks like shit. But that's just the cut," the sallow thing said. "It's fine." Eddie tore a sheet of paper from the notepad on the desk and separated a small amount of the brown powder from the pile. He fingered it, then rubbed it on the roof of his mouth. A second later he spat into the wastebasket. "You want to die? Is that it? You got a death wish?" "That's all there is." The sallow thing looked more sulky than ever. "I have a reservation out tomorrow," Eddie said. This was a lie, but he didn't want to believe the sallow thing had the resources to check it. "TWA. I did it on my own, just in case the contract happened to be a little fuck-up like you. I don't mind. It'll be a relief, actually. I wasn't cut out for this sort of work." The sallow thing sat and cogitated. Eddie sat and concentrated on not moving. He felt like moving. He felt like slipping and sliding and piping and boping and shucking and jiving and scratching his scratches and cracking his crackers. He even felt his eyes wanting to slide back to the pile of brown powder, although he knew it was poison. He had fixed at 10 that morning. The same number of hours had gone by since then. But if he had any of those things, the situation would change. The sallow thing was doing more than cogitating. It was watching him, trying to calculate the depth of him. "I might be able to find something," it said at last. "Why don't you try?" Eddie Dean said. "But come 11, I turn out the light and put on the do not disturb sign on the door, and anybody that knocks after that, I call the desk and say someone's bothering me and to send a security guard." "You're a fuck," the sallow thing said in its impeccable British accent. "No," Eddie said. "A fuck is what you expected. I came with my legs crossed. You want to be here before 11 with something that I can use. It doesn't have to be great, just something I can use. Or you'll be one dead scuzz." 7. The sallow thing was back long before 11. He was back by 9:30. Eddie guessed the other stuff had been in his car all along. A little more powder this time. Not white, but at least a dull ivory color, which was mildly hopeful. Eddie tasted it. It seemed alright. Actually better than alright. Pretty good. He rolled the bill and snorted. "Well then, until this Sunday," the sallow thing said briskly, getting to his feet. "Wait," Eddie said as if he were the one with the gun. In a way, he was. The gun of Balazar. Emilio Balazar was a high-caliber big shot in New York's wonderful world of drugs. "White?" The sallow thing turned and looked at Eddie as if he believed Eddie must be insane. "For what?" "Well, I was actually thinking of you," Eddie said. "If I get really sick from what I just put into my body, it's off. If I die, of course it's off. I was just thinking of that. If I only get a little sick, I might give you another chance. You know, like the story about how some kid rubs a lamp and gets 3 wishes. It will not make you sick. That's China White, it is." "If that's China White," Eddie said, "I'm Dwight Gooden." "Who?" "Never mind." The sallow thing sat down. Eddie sat by the motel room desk with a little pile of white powder nearby. The decon, or whatever it had been, had long since gone down the John. On TV, the Braves were getting shellacked by the Mets, courtesy of WTBS and the big satellite dish on the Aquinas Hotel's roof. Eddie felt a faint sensation of calm which seemed to be coming from the back of his mind. Except where it really was coming from, he knew from what he had read in the medical journals, was from the bunch of living wires at the base of his spine, that place where heroin addiction takes place by causing an unnatural thickening of the nerve stem. "Want to take a quick cure?" he had asked Henry once. "Break your spine, Henry. Your legs stop working, and so does your cock, but you stop needing the needle right away." Henry hadn't thought it was funny. In truth, Eddie hadn't thought it was funny either. When the only fast way out could get rid of the monkey on your back was to snap your spinal cord above that bunch of nerves, you were dealing with one heavy monkey. That was no capuchin, no cute little organ grinder mascot. That was a big old mean baboon. Eddie began to sniffle. "Okay," he said at last. "It'll do. You can vacate the premises, cuz." The sallow thing got up. "I'll have friends," he said. "They could come in here and do all things to you. You'd beg to tell me where that key is." "Not me, champ," Eddie said. "Not this kid," and smiled. He didn't know how that smile looked, but it must have not looked all that cheery because the sallow thing vacated the premises, vacated them fast, vacated them without looking back. When Eddie Dean was sure he was gone, he cooked, fixed, slept. 8. As he was sleeping now, the gunslinger, somehow inside this man's mind, a man whose name he still didn't know, the lowling the prisoner thought of as the sallow thing, had not known it, and so had never spoken it. Watched this as he had once watched plays as a child, before the world had moved on, or so he thought he watched, because plays were all he had ever seen. If he had ever seen a moving picture, he would have thought of that first. The things he did not actually see, he had been able to pluck from the prisoner's mind because the associations were close. It was odd about the name, though. He knew the name of the prisoner's brother, but not the name of the man himself. But of course, names were secret things, full of power. Another of the things that mattered was the man's name, one of the weaknesses of the addiction. The other was the steel burning inside that weakness, like a good gun sinking into quicksand. This man reminded the gunslinger achingly of Cuthbert. Someone was coming. The prisoner, sleeping, did not hear. The gunslinger, not sleeping, did, and came forward. "Great," Jane thought. "He tells me how hungry he is, and then I fix him something up because I think he's a little bit cute, and he falls asleep on me." Then the passenger, a guy of about 20, tall, wearing clean, slightly faded blue jeans, and a paisley shirt, opened his eyes a little and smiled at her. "Thank ye, Cy," he said, or so it sounded, almost archaic or foreign. "Sleep talk, that's all," Jane thought. "You're welcome." She smiled her best stewardess smile, sure he would fall asleep again, and the sandwich will still be there, uneaten, when it was time for the actual meal service. Well, that was what they were taught you to expect, wasn't it? She went back to the galley to catch a smoke. She struck the match, lifted it halfway to her cigarette, and there it stopped, unnoticed, because that wasn't all they were taught you to expect. "I thought he was a little bit cute, mostly because of his eyes, his hazel eyes. But when the man in 3A had opened his eyes a moment ago, they hadn't been hazel. They had been blue. Not sweet, sexy blue like Paul Newman's eyes either, but the color of icebergs. They... Ow! The match had reached her fingers. She shook it out. "Jane?" Paula asked. "You all right?" "Fine. Daydreaming." She lit another match and this time did the job right. She had only taken a single drag when the perfectly reasonable explanation occurred to her. He wore contacts, of course. The kind that changed the color of your eyes. He had gone into the bathroom, had been in there long enough for her to worry about him being airsick. He had that pallid complexion, the look of a man who is not quite well, but he had only been taking out his contact lenses so he could nap more comfortably. Perfectly reasonable. "You may feel something," a voice from her own not-so-distant past suddenly spoke. "Some little tickle." you may see something just a little bit wrong. Colored contact lenses. Jane Drowning personally knew over 24 people who wore contacts. Most of them worked for the airline. No one ever said anything about it, but she thought maybe one reason was they all sensed the passengers didn't like to see flight personnel wearing glasses. It made them nervous. Of all those people, she knew maybe 4 who had color contacts. Ordinary contact lenses were expensive. Colored ones cost the earth. All of the people of Jane's acquaintances who cared to lay out that sort of money were all women, all of them extremely vain. So what? Guys can be vain too. Why not? He's good looking. No, he wasn't. Cute, maybe, but that was as far as it went. And with the pallid complexion, he only made it to cute by the skin of his teeth. So why the color contacts? Airline passengers are often afraid of flying. In a world where hijacking and drug smuggling had become facts of life, airline personnel are often afraid of passengers. The voice that had initiated these thoughts had been that of an instructor at flight school, a tough old battle axe who looked as if she could have flown the mail with Wiley Post, saying, "Don't ignore your suspicions. If you forget everything else you've learned about coping with potential or actual terrorists, remember this: don't ignore your suspicions." In some cases, you'll get a crew who'll say during the debriefing that they didn't have any idea until the guy pulled out a grenade and said, "Hang a left for Cuba," or "everyone on the aircraft is going to join the jet stream." But in most cases, you get 2 or 3 different people, mostly flight attendants, which you women will be in less than a month, who will say they felt something, some little tickle, a sense that the guy in 91C or the young woman in 5A was a little wrong. They felt something, but they did nothing. Did they get fired for that? Christ no! You can't put a guy in the restraints because you don't like the way he scratches his pimples. The real problem is that they felt something and forgot. The old battle axe had raised one blunt finger. Jane Dorning, along with her fellow classmates, had listened raptly as she said, "If you feel that little tickle, don't do anything. But that includes not forgetting, because there's always that one little chance that you just might be able to stop something before it gets started. Something like an unscheduled 12-day layover on the tarmac of some shitpot Arab country." Just color contacts, but thanky sigh. Sleep talk? Or a muddle lapse in some other language? She would watch, Jane decided, and she would not forget. 10. Now, the gunslinger thought. Now we'll see, won't we? He had been able to come from his world into this body through the door on the beach. What he needed to find out was whether or not he could carry things back. Oh, not himself. He was confident he could return through the door and re-enter his own poisoned, sickening body at any time he should desire. But other things? Physical things? Here, for instance, in front of him was food, something the woman in the uniform had called a tutorfish sandwich. The gunslinger had no idea what tutorfish was, but he knew a popkin when he saw it, although this one looked curiously uncooked. His body needed to eat, and his body would need to drink. But more than either, his body needed some sort of medicine. It would die from the lobstrosity's bite without it. There might be such medicine in this world, in a world where carriages rode through the air far above, where even the strongest eagle could fly. Anything seemed possible. But it would not matter how much powerful medicine there was if he could carry nothing physical through the door. "You could live in this body, gunslinger," the voice of the man in black whispered deep inside his head. "Leave that piece of breathing meat over there for the lobster things. It's only a husk anyway." He would not do that. For one thing, it would be the most murderous sort of thievery, because he would not be content to be just a passenger for long, looking out of this man's eyes like a traveler looking out of a coach window at passing scenery. For another, he was Roland. If dying was required, he intended to die as Roland. He would die crawling towards the tower, if that was what was required. Then the odd, harsh practicality that lived beside the romantic in his nature like a tiger with a roe reasserted itself. There was no need to think of dying, with the experiment not yet made. He picked up the popkin. It had been cut in 2 halves. He held one in each hand. He opened the prisoner's eyes and looked out at them. No one was looking at him, although in the galley Jane Dorning was thinking about him, and very hard. Roland turned towards the door and went through, holding the popkin halves in his hand. 11. First he heard the grinding roar of an incoming wave. Next he heard the argument of many seabirds arising from the closet rocks as he struggled to a sitting position. Cowardly buggers were creeping up, he thought, and they would have been taking pecks out of me soon, still breathing or no. They're nothing but vultures with a coat of paint. Then he became aware that one popkin half, the one in his right hand, had tumbled onto the grey sand because he had been holding it with the whole of his hand when he came through the door and now was, or had been, holding it in a hand which had suffered a 40% reduction. He picked it up clumsily, pinching it between his thumb and ring finger, brushed as much of the sand from it as he could, and took a tentative bite. A moment later he was wolfing it, not noticing the few bits of sand which ground between his teeth. Seconds later he turned his attention to the other half. It was gone in 3 bites. The gunslinger had no idea what tutorfish was, only that it was delicious. That seemed enough. 12. In the plane, no one saw the tuna sandwich disappear. No one saw Eddie Dean's hands grasp the 2 halves of it tightly enough to make deep thumb indentations in the white bread. No one saw the sandwich fade into transparency, then disappear, leaving only a few crumbs. About 20 seconds after this had happened, Jane Dorning stuffed her cigarette and crossed the head of the cabin. She got her book from her tote bag, but when she really wanted was another look at 3A. He appeared to be deeply asleep, but the sandwich was gone. Jesus, Jane thought. He didn't eat it, he swallowed it whole. And now he's asleep again? Are you kidding? Whatever was tickling her about 3A, Mr. Now they're hazel, now they're blue, kept right on tickling. Something about him was not right. Something. Thank you guys for sitting down with another part of Majin reading The Gunslinger. And we'll be back tomorrow to see what happens with Mr. Eddie Dean. Will Roland be able to find the medicine he needs? Will they even be able to clear customs, considering they have a lot of cocaine under Mr. Dean's armpits? I'd like to say sorry for the British accent I gave him, the guy who switched drugs with Eddie Dean, because I felt like I gave him more of an Australian sound than British. British is the one accent I can't do. British and American I can't do for the life of me. I can do a whole lot others, but no, I cannot do British or Australian. I'm trying my best, and that's all I can say. Hopefully, eventually, I'll even get the New York accent down for Dean, even though the books say it fades in time. I don't even want to think about a certain other character that is of different ethnicity and also of a particular peculiar accent in America. So yeah, thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow. Long days and pleasant nights, listener.